Call to order. The City of Dickinson regular meeting of the City Commission for Tuesday, October 15th, 2019. Let the record show that all commissioners are present. First item up is the order of business. Mr. Gah, are there any changes to the order of business?
Yes, President Decker, we are going to take a few items off, all under the administration finance. B for the building inspector job descriptions, both of those will be pulled at this time, as well as under reports, section D, item number 2, the State Equalization Board update will also be removed.
Any other changes to the order of business?
No, sir.
Any questions for Mr. Gah on the order of business? If not, I'd look for a motion to approve the amended order of business.
Just approve. Second.
We have a motion to approve with a second. Any further discussion or questions for Mr. Gah? Hearing none, all in favor of the amended order of business, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consent agenda. Commissioners, are there any items on the consent agenda you wish to discuss? I do have one request. I don't know when this all of a sudden started, but I would like to see this change. All financial reports do not need to be in the consent agenda. They need to be on the regular agenda. And if I'm correct, we've normally had them on the regular agenda. So I would like to see them back on the regular agenda.
Okay, would you like the slides then? Those are
Yes.
when we give the quarterly
Yes,
report?
The full report, yes.
Every month then?
Every month.
Okay, we can do that.
Unless, commissioners, you're opposed. But I would like to see that.
I'm fine with that.
So, okay.
Did we do them quarterly before?
We used to do them monthly.
Yeah,
We-
we used to do them monthly.
We just did a monthly, but according to Century Code, you just need a monthly in the agenda to be done, and then you have that choice of whether or not you want to present them, and that's up to the commissioners.
Okay.
So we can, as I understand, we will do it on a monthly basis, in front and presentation.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. Okay. Any items on the consent agenda you wish to discuss? The one other item, and I got some clarification today, the one item that commissioners, you may have noticed that was missing, we had a late documentation. The credit card bills are not on this month. Am I correct? So we'll have 2 on hopefully next month we'll have 2.
You are correct, President Decker. The capital, our Commerce Bank statement came in on the morning of the 10th, and we have to have everything into the agenda by the 10th, so there was no balancing of it, and that's why. It's where the meeting, so it'll be in with the next one too.
So you should see that the first meeting in November.
Correct.
For this month.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Any other items? Not, I'd look for a motion on the consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion, questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We do have a 5 o'clock timetable this evening. We'll continue on to the non-timetable items. And the first item up is proclamation. And this proclamation is from the City of Dickinson to celebrate Extra Mile Day 2019. I'll go ahead and read the proclamation. Celebrate Extra Mile Day 2019. Whereas Dickinson, North Dakota is a community which acknowledges that a special vibrancy exists within the entire community when its individual citizens collectively go the extra mile in personal effort, volunteerism, and service. And whereas Dickinson, North Dakota is a community which encourages its citizens to maximize their personal contribution to the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual ambitions, family, friends, and community. And whereas Dickinson, North Dakota is a community which chooses to shine a light on and celebrate individuals and organizations within its community who go the extra mile in order to make a difference and lift up fellow members of their community. And whereas Dickinson, North Dakota acknowledges the mission of Extra Mile America to create 550 extra mile cities in America and is proud to support Extra Mile Day on November 1st, 2019. Now, therefore, I, Scott Decker, President of the City Commission of Dickinson, North Dakota, do hereby proclaim November 1st, 2019 to be Extra Mile Day. I urge each individual in the community to take time on this day to not only go the extra mile in his or her own life, but to also acknowledge all those who are inspirational in their efforts and commitment to make their organizations, families, community, country, or world a better place. And I would look for a motion to approve this proclamation.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion to approve with a second. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
I will sign the proclamation. Motion carries. That's the Mr. Gah. Thank you. Our next item, we have the amended items B and C are, B is gone. So Mr. Gah will move right into item C.
Yes, thank you, President Decker. Commissioners, you'll see we have a PowerPoint up here to go through this, but just as a little bit of a reminder to both the commission and the public that might be listening, is several months ago, there were two sites being considered for the town square, A and B, and the commission said, let's go with site B, and we started working with an architect to update that plan. We had a plan for site A and to continue updating it, and that site B was in an area that was a city parking lot at the time, and we'll have some maps up here in a minute to show that. So that discussion moved forward, and that was really here, if we turn this on, what started the whole discussion was we were looking for the town square site and how that would function. And at the same point in time that was going on, and we were looking at on the west side of First Avenue West in the city parking lot, American Bank Center was also looking. They have a bank and insurance building on the east side of First Avenue West, and they're looking at a new site just north of there to construct a bank. And so with that came some discussion of they're going to need some additional parking, and they were planning on putting a parking lot where the current bank is. And we reached out to them and said, you know, we're going to have some parking concerns with the town square, and maybe we can work together on this, thinking that we might partner on that parking lot venture. It evolved into a discussion that perhaps the current bank center site might make a better town square site. And so we'll show you here a map that gives you a little bit of a starting point of where the current, this is the insurance building and where the bank currently is. This is where they're constructing their new bank. Over here we have the big city paved parking lot, an unpaved parking lot, and then a smaller one here, which are really used a lot by American Bank Center now. And again, this is where they will take the old building down, and we were talking about a town square site. So you can see it's right across the street. It's a corner lot which lent itself very similarly in design and size to Site A. And so we thought that might be something to pursue. So we did that, moving along with that discussion. And if we were to do that, if we were to take the parking lot site, how could we, in exchange, have some parking or designate some parking for the American Bank Center, since we would be receiving the property that they were going to have as their parking lot. So we also said to ourselves, maintaining parking, additional parking close to the town square is important to us. So we looked at if we were to take the former Bank Center lot, again, which is here, and trade American Bank Center for this piece of parking here and another piece of parking here, that would be a fairly fair trade as far as size of lots. They will remain parking lots. During the day, they will be used by American Bank Center as they typically are now, but if you look at night, they're open for events. They're used heavily on First. So we again felt that it really lent well to itself. And then we would still have a large city parking lot over here that we feel we would need to make some upgrades to. So those are how the discussions evolved and went into that. And so the next step in the plan, that was how to improve it. So those are the things we went through that I decided it, how to have a shared parking plan that enhances the use of the town square, all businesses downtown, and in particular, the new bank center, since we would be taking their parking lot. So we've evolved into an exchange for the parking. American Bank Center will tear down the former bank building and deed that to the city. This will be the location of the town square, and again, the site is similar in size and layout to the first proposal. So when we look at the next updated map, then again, you see the town square site, the new bank center. We should mention this is the library, and that will be built out too with their proposed plans. And then we maintain some parking areas here. So again, we feel like this has been a very good opportunity, and to reiterate the two documents you'll approve tonight. One of them is an MOU for the town square site, which details and formalizes these parking arrangements. But then also there's another document that's a purchase agreement, because one of the things that came up during this discussion was that there is some additional space needed for city offices here at City Hall. We're really busting at the seams in this building. And to build a new City Hall would be a very expensive undertaking. Is it $10 million? Is it $20 million? We just don't feel that that was appropriate, but we've looked at some other options. What if we were to purchase an existing smaller building and move some of the offices there and free up some room here at City Hall? We'd looked at that over a several-month period of time, not liking those options very well. Staying under one roof, making it convenient, one-stop shop was important to us. So through these discussions, it also came up that the American Insurance building that would remain would be vacated by the bank and for sale. So through these discussions, it really became more than the town square. But if that building's available, would we want to purchase that? And that's the document that is in front of you today, because the next step is the proposal to acquire that building, where American Bank Center will sell the city the insurance building for a sum of $1.1 million, and they would also take this building for trade that they would likely sell in the end, which proposes a total value of $2.5 to $2.6 million. Again, much less than building a new building, and we would pretty much double the amount of space over there. So definitely room for growth in the future. That building was totally renovated 10 years ago, so it's an older historic building, but the inside looks like a brand new office building essentially. So that would be the final plan there, that we would get possession around January 2021, because they've got quite a year ahead of them to build their building. We would have a few minor alterations to prepare the building, and then likely move in mid-2021. So in tying those two together, if those are both approved and we move forward, what's next? Well, the very basic step would be to complete the final design for the town square. This is essential so that the DID and DDA can begin their fundraising campaign, which is part of an agreement we have with them to make the town square a reality. Again, the bank has to be built. The old bank has to be torn down. But probably the most important for us as a city is to continue to work out those final logistics on parking. We know that we'll own some, American Bank Center will own some, but making sure that it maximizes the usage. Perhaps there's some restriping and some efficiencies we can gain together on those. So I think a lot of discussion. There's time to do that. We have some time in the purchase agreement to do some due diligence on the building and finalize those details. But we feel pretty good with where we're at. We feel it's an opportunity for the town square. It's an opportunity for city offices, and at a much lesser cost than what it would be for new construction. That would likely have to be done outside of the downtown area, and we think maintaining city offices downtown is important. So with that said, if these are approved tonight by the commission, it is still pending final bank approval, bank board approval. Their staff has reviewed everything. There may be a couple minor changes based on the board meeting, but we feel that getting the city's commission's discussion and permission moving forward is critical.
Thank you, Mr. Gah. Any questions? We'll start with the MOU from the commissioners to Mr. Gah. Again, this is contingent upon the bank board approval, and if there are any amendments from their side, will have to come through us, our legal department, through city administration, and we'll have to also look at that if we need to take up another vote to the amended document. So first we'll start with the MOU. Any questions for staff? Hearing no questions, I'd look for a motion on the MOU.
Mr. President, I would move to approve.
We have a motion to approve the MOU with American Bank Center.
Second.
With a second. Any further questions, comments?
Mr. President, I'd like to declare a conflict of interest, so I will abstain from voting on both of these items, except with the vote of the remaining commissioners. If you vote to allow me to vote, that can be done. So if one wants to make a motion, forces me to vote, you can do that, or allows me to vote, you can do that.
And you're abstaining because of being a prior employee,
I'm a current employee.
current employee, okay. Well, then if you're a current employee, I think maybe just best let you abstain.
It's up to you guys.
Yeah.
It's up to you guys.
Mr. President, just to add some comments, I know we have a motion on the table, but I feel like we owe the public a little bit of background and information on how we got here today. The Downtown Square project has been in the works for it feels like many years now, and has really evolved through community input and location changes, and we've really tried to do our due diligence and finding a cost-effective, fiscally conservative approach to bringing this to the community. Initially we were looking at purchasing buildings and tearing them down. Then we were looking at another site location that was owned by the city, but just didn't quite have the space that we were looking for. This is really a unique opportunity for us to, again, revitalize a part of downtown that's continuing to see growth and provide connection to the library, and hopefully encourage more revitalization in that area. I think this agreement between the bank center I wasn't a part of it, but I think we're lucky in that we found some opportunities to really move that project forward. We do have the downtown Dickinson Association, who will be leading a capital campaign to bring this to Dickinson. So I think it's very important that we finally are able to finalize a location so that they can move forward with that process. And before we go into the purchase agreement, I think it was very important to all of us that there would be a solution to the current building. So knowing that this building will be taken care of and we will be compensated through our agreement, and also that we don't have to look at building a new city hall. Fargo has spent $30 million on their city hall, and I know they're substantially bigger, but when you do the math, this is a huge cost save for this community. So I just think it's important to provide some perspective. I wasn't in a lot of those conversations, but I do think that when looking ahead, this is a good thing for our community.
Any other comments? Is there, to Mr. Steiner's request, is there any discussion? I've stated, I didn't realize he was still employed. I thought he was retired from American Bank Center, but
I can be retired. Boy,
Mr. Kripe,
been accused of that for the last 20 years.
give us your legal input.
There's no legal requirement in the state of North Dakota to recuse yourself in the event of a conflict. It's an ethical decision that each elected official makes, so it's really up to the board. From a extremely conservative abundance of caution approach, I always feel if there's a declared conflict, you're better off just not participating in the vote.
Fair enough.
And the reason I bring it up that you can vote on it is sometimes on issues, people will find a reason to abstain, but yet the board can see a 2-2 or no, you're going to tell us your opinion and how you're going to vote. And so that gives them the opportunity to say, we will allow you to vote yes or no. So, like, it doesn't make any difference to me. I think I know which way this is going to go.
And I thank you for that, Mr. Steiner, like I said, for declaring. I was unaware. I apologize if I offended you by saying you were retired, but. So, but to Mrs. Trustum's point, looking at the needs of the city, when we initially started discussions on this parking lot and some of the other facilities that were going into this area, and we were presented with this unique opportunity and to have a partnership with American Bank to basically transform the whole downtown area. And I think this is the best for the city. We can't build a building like Fargo. Minot's looking at building a new city hall. Bismarck's looking. Williston's possibly looking. Everybody's looking, and this was just such a unique opportunity to get into a historic building that has been completely renovated. And Mr. Steiner's worked in the building since it's been renovated, so he can, if anybody has any questions, they can ask him. You know, this is it's a great building, and for the price, when we were looking at having a separated building, an annexed facility, we couldn't find a better facility than this. So I'm just glad that we've had these discussions and came to an agreement with the bank. I know it's been long, it's been challenging, but we'll get this done. Back to the point, commissioners, I basically stated, you know, Mr. Steiner's said he's got a conflict to go with legal, saying that to err on the side of being conservative, I would go with legal on this unless you feel differently.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, so I guess we'll take a vote with you abstaining, Mr. Steiner.
Oh, you got to roll call me and then I'll abstain.
All right, we have a motion to approve the MOU and a second. Any further discussion? Questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Abstain.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Next item up is the bank agreement. Are there any questions, comments, before I look for a motion?
Mr. President, I think it's important to talk about our funding options. I know that's going to be a topic of conversation. We're acquiring property. You know, how does that affect our taxpayers? We do have funds set aside in our future fund and other funds just for this purpose. So, Ms. Carlson, can you guide us through what that looks like?
Thank you, Commissioner Trustum. So what that is that we have financials, and what it is the future fund is investments, and we have set aside in our financial reports, you'll see there's about $7 million in there. And with that, we can have options of either transferring the funds out of there through our cash and purchasing, and or we could use a loan to ourselves, where we've done that before, or we can use other funding of cash balances through our general fund and or the revenues that are coming in. So I guess what I'm preferring is to use our future fund, because that is what, as you stated, that is what it's used for, and we have money in there for that.
So this would not affect taxpayers?
No,
Thank you.
no.
Okay, any other comments or questions for staff? Well, hearing none, I'd look for a motion on the purchase agreement.
Mr. President, make a motion, we approve the purchase agreement with American Bank Center.
We have a motion to approve
Second?
with a second. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Abstain?
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries on the bank agreement. And Mr. Gah, you proceed with the negotiations and finalize or get back to us immediately if there are any amendments to the agreement.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll move on to I think we can get Mrs. Nominick's report in before 5 o'clock.
Good evening, Mr. President, Commissioners. First up on the hiring journal is the police officer position. We currently have 2 applicants that are in the background phase for this position. We have a communications specialist position that we just filled, and one that we are taking applications for. The operations manager position is open, and if you remember, that was our street and fleet operations manager, and we've changed the title to operations manager. We have asked for assistance from Prothman to assist us in trying to fill this position, so that will be open until October 20th. Collections route operator, we have hired a couple individuals for that position. We have one more position to fill, and interviews will be this week for that position. We have a scale service representative position that we just filled. That person is working for us already. And then the bookmobile position, we made a couple little changes to the title. It is a bookmobile and school services librarian position, and that position has just been opened. That's all we have at this time.
Thank you, Mrs. Nominick. Any questions for Mrs. Nominick on the hiring journal? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gah, we have a few minutes, so if we have a couple of reports here.
I believe Ms. Innan is here, and she has an update on the Big Greed community.
Okay. Ms. Anna?
Good evening, President and Commissioners. I'm here to talk a little bit about a special grant that was received by DSU that is a community partnership between DSU, the public library, the high school library, the public library in Bowman, and several other partners. Through this, they were able to receive a National Endowment for the Arts grant. They give 75 of these grants nationwide each year, and our community was selected for one of them. The intent of that grant is to foster community conversations around literature, and we have chosen the book, The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. So this is going to be being read in the high school classrooms, in DSU classrooms, book clubs around the community. We have 120 copies of the book at the public library to give out, so you can come and get yours. The kickoff event will be hosted at the public library on the 22nd at 7 p.m. And Tim O'Brien will be here on, I believe, November the 17th. Lots of other events, so we hope to get all of our community engaged in talking about veterans issues and affairs, which is what the book is about. And be sure you come and you get your copy. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any questions for Mrs. Anna? This is a great honor to have this awarded to the city, and hopefully this will, further discussions within the community about veterans' needs.
Absolutely.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rita.
Okay, we'll move into our 5 o'clock timetable, and that is a civil science presentation. So, you want to come forward?
Absolutely, President. I'm a little tall for the microphone, so I'll just adjust that.
I feel you.
My name is Kyle Comer. I'm the project manager, and I'm a principal for civil science engineering. And we have been contracted by the Department of Transportation in conjunction with the City of Dickinson to work on the I-94 I-94 Business Loop project from State Avenue to 10th Avenue East. I've also, let me just do a couple of other brief introductions. I've got with me tonight Carl Rohde over here to my left. And together we're working on this project from our local Dickinson office. Also behind me, if you can raise your hand, Jason Fisher from the district of the DOT here in Dickinson, and also Mike Johnson. There's Mike, who is the local government representative, essentially our liaison with the Department of Transportation on this project. So I wanted to start out by, as you see on the screen, the focus of our presentation tonight is on a road diet involving Villard Street. But before I get into talking in more detail about a road diet, I want to give you a little bit of background context on what we've been doing and how we got to where we are here tonight. So first is a little bit of background. This project was selected for urban grant funding, and the principal goals that were identified in that application that the city staff worked on and were successful in being selected for involved replacing aging lighting and signal infrastructure, principally in the section from State Avenue to 10th Avenue East. That the focus in the application was primarily on trying to improve the vibrancy of downtown, enhance lighting, aesthetics of lighting and signal-related facilities to bring some beautification and aesthetic value to the downtown area. So I'm going to show you just some of the features that we're looking at and talking about. So the picture on the left is a picture of the existing light pole features that are on Villard in the project area that we're talking about. As you're aware, they're looking kind of old and dated. What we're looking at is to install some updated LED type lighting that's going to be more efficient and less costly, but also put that in conjunction with some enhanced aesthetic value of the types of poles that we're installing those lights on, as you see some examples there to the right. And just to give you an idea of where those are going in, the green symbols show those higher, taller poles that are spread out from the core downtown area. And as we get more into the core downtown area from 3rd Avenue West to about 3rd Avenue East, you see that we're kind of putting a mixture of the lower profile, but a tighter, more dense application of those lights to bring that aesthetic value to the core downtown area.
Can I ask
Yes.
a question at this point?
Yes, absolutely.
Are the standard lights, are they going to be on one side of the street or alternate?
They'll be on both sides of the street, and they'll be alternating on each side.
Okay, thank you.
So, again, our primary focus has been on lighting and enhancements of lighting and traffic signals. We held a public input meeting in May and talked about the lighting and signal upgrades and potential changes involving the signals. In particular, there were a lot of discussion about this road diet concept, and that kind of stemmed from a discussion that was held with a number of individuals at that meeting, where there was a lot of discussion about pedestrian concerns The interaction between vehicular traffic and pedestrians in the downtown area, and particularly that core area, where there's a lot of activity of pedestrians. And additionally to that, there was a discussion about the intent of the DOT's district office to do a resurfacing project that would was planned to come over that same area that we're talking about here and put down a new surface and new striping. And so there was quite a lot of discussion about if that's going to happen, how do we want this to be striped, how do we want this to look, and seeing that as a potential opportunity to discuss a road diet concept. And it's my understanding that after that public meeting, there was some interaction with staff and with the commission to discuss that and talk about that in that core downtown area. And I'm going to show you a graphic here in a minute that will highlight those areas and some others as well. So what are we talking about when we talk about a road diet concept? Essentially, we're talking about a roadway reconfiguration that focuses on what you see in quotes, their complete streets approach. And essentially what that means is that we're trying to look more holistically at a multitude of users that are using these facilities in this area, pedestrians, bicyclists, vehicles that are traveling and also parking. So there's a lot of things that are going on in that area, and how do we do that so that it's understandable, people can expect to know what is going to happen in any particular area when they're looking at each of these multiple uses. A road diet generally is looked to improve safety, mobility, and access, and I'll show you why that is here in just a moment. And there have been, these road diet concepts have been implemented throughout the United States for a good 20 years or more, and so they're a pretty proven approach, as long as it fits within the context of the project area that it's being applied to. So what it is it's a conversion from a 4-lane cross-section with 2 lanes going in each direction with just a center stripe to a 3-lane cross-section, as you see in the pictures to the right, that has a centered continuous turning type lane, and then only a single travel lane in each direction. Along with, as you see from this picture, hopefully you can see that detail, that by reducing the number of lanes, it offers some additional space on the roadsides to be able to enhance parking, to be able to provide some additional space for pedestrians and for bicyclists. And so that it starts to move more downtown area type settings towards a more holistic approach to all of those different uses. What are the benefits? The average I've indicated here is 33% crash reduction. That's a statistics from the Federal Highway Administration. They actually represented a range, and that's the average of the range. So essentially, roughly about a third of the accidents. You see with a 4-lane cross-section that there's going to be some confusion or some uncertainty for drivers with the car that's in the leftmost lane. Are they going to turn? Are they going to go straight? And the cars behind tend to run into them and have rear-end accidents if they stop. So the addition of a center turn lane that allows more certainty of where that traffic is going and alerts pedestrians and other drivers to know where a vehicle is turning and when, produces a real benefit in safety. That also translates to improved mobility and access that cars can get mid-block to other areas that are important to them to get to and park and move. I mentioned before the increased parking and pedestrian space, and then why are we talking about this in relation to Villard? As I mentioned before, there was quite a lot of discussion in that public meeting. In addition, we've done some analysis and looked at, does this fit here? It's not an approach necessarily you want to put everywhere, and if if Villard was a facility or a roadway that had a lot more traffic on it, if it was more congested and more dense in the travel stream, then it probably wouldn't work as well. But because of the traffic volumes that do exist on Villard and what we forecasted into the future out to 2040, it looks like it would be a good fit for this particular area. So you've talked before in your commission meeting about looking at that, a potential road diet in that core area of downtown, roughly from 4th Avenue West to 3rd Avenue East, 4th Avenue East, somewhere in that general vicinity. And what I've shown on the graphic here is that area that's in red. You see that's actually now shown to extend further east to 10th Avenue East as we've looked at what's happening with that resurfacing project with the future East Business Loop project that's going to start and improve the intersection at 10th Avenue East. It looks like it makes a lot of sense to be able to extend that to that particular location and be able to merge the cross-section that's planned for the East Business Loop project going further east. So we've shown that from 4th Avenue West over to 10th Avenue East in our current depictions. I've also shown up on the top, the yellow line represents an additional area that there's been some recent discussion about involving extending that road diet all the way to State Avenue. And I think that's something that we wanted to bring to you tonight and see if you wanted to have some discussion or some input relative to that before we made any particular decisions in regard to that. So that's part of the reason why I wanted to come and do this presentation tonight is related to that issue. On the bottom of this graphic, you see, it's kind of hard to see with the striping on that gray background, but you see the 3-lane cross-section in a depiction somewhere near the 4th Avenue East area, and it will afford more opportunity or more space for parking and moving in and around the Villard Street area. Finally, just looking ahead, and I'm going to come back and see if you have comments or questions and input relative to the location of the road diet concept. But as we look forward, we're in the final stages of our final design processes, planning on having that completed here in about a month or so. And then as we look forward, the project is planned to begin construction sometime in 2020. Actually, the bidding period is, I believe, February of 2020, and then contracting, and then work on trying to secure materials and get going sometime in the 2020 timeframe. So that's my presentation. I just wanted to step back, if we could, and talk a little bit about the application of the road diet, see if you have questions, and see if you have some input on where that would be applicable or concerns about where we've shown it on either of the sections that you see on this screen. So I'll turn it back to you,
Thank
President.
you. Any questions, commissioners?
Mr. President, I understand the concept from the 4 to the 3. I do think it'll be a lot safer for pedestrians. Obviously, they'll be able to get out farther. Cars will see them. Some people don't think that, but when they're thinking about the 4-lane, they're closer to the car or the drivable lane when they're getting out of their car. I see there's going to be some pretty good footage between them now.
Yeah, there's increased space between where the cars are in the center of the road as compared to the parked cars on the edge.
So my question is, outside of the paint on the crosswalks, is there any physical object that will be put there to attract a little more attention that this is where the pedestrians cross? 'Cause right now, I think what they got to do is step out there and look.
Like there are areas now where somebody presses the button and a light flashes above that a pedestrian's crossing. That's basically what you're getting to.
Well, I don't know if that's it or not, but what do you do in other places that had that problem?
We've had that, at that meeting in May, we had the discussion of a possible pedestrian crossing with lights, especially
Yes.
down by Sims and First, in between there. Where
Yeah, so let me kind of speak to that a little bit more if I can, President. as part of that discussion that we had that evening that you referenced, the particular concern was stated more about First Avenue West in that particular area than the Sims area, where there is a current traffic signal and some protection, or at least that's historically the way it's been. And so
Was some protection.
yes. So we actually, after that public meeting, we went out and we did some pedestrian counts during a peak hour, what we thought was a peak hour period for pedestrians, which is more during the lunch hour time frame on a typical weekday. And what we found was that during that hour, we had 46 pedestrians cross at First Avenue West. We had 10 that crossed illegally mid-block, and we had 4 that crossed at Sims Street. So it was pretty clear that kind of the anecdotal evidence that we had heard that night and had some discussion with members of the community and staff, that there is a lot of pedestrian crossing and activity in that First Avenue area, primarily probably prompted by the parking area that's next to the railroad depot and people trying to get across to the restaurants and other shopping areas on the north side of the street. So stemming from that discussion, from those investigations, the current plan is to install a pedestrian actuated overhead type signal with flashing lights that would span the roadway, have flashing lights on both directions that can be actuated by a pedestrian that's crossing at the First Avenue area, to be able to address that concentrated pedestrian flow that's happening in that particular area. So that it's exactly what you had discussed about what we talked about that evening, and how that's then translated to what the current design is looking like.
I think we have one, their example up here at 4th Avenue East now, there's a light.
Yes, there is.
Pedestrian
Yes, there is.
crossing,
But that one flashes all the time, right?
Right, and
So-
so people tend to not pay attention to it.
Right.
Because it flashes all the time. And with the 4 lanes, you see a lot of traffic going either way, and they see somebody wanting to cross, so that first car stops.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the inside car doesn't stop, and then
Yeah.
the pedestrian.
Yeah, and that's a very dangerous
proceeds out into the
situation. Yep.
street. And I've seen it on numerous occasions where the inside car hasn't stopped, and it almost struck a pedestrian.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
so going to the 3 lanes, I think, will make it much safer for pedestrians and offer different opportunities for the downtown and just all of Villard. My question would be on the end at 10th Avenue East.
Mm-hmm.
The subject comes up numerous times about that intersection, and that is right now not a good intersection
Right.
to especially take a left on coming off of 10th. Is there plans for a roundabout there?
Yes, there is. That was the decision that was reached a couple of years ago when the project was put on hold to address additional funding. But yeah, a roundabout is planned at 10th Avenue East.
Maybe,
And that would include the realignment of the East Villard Street and bringing it up into a more straightforward, more perpendicular type connection into that intersection to improve what is a pretty difficult angle and geometry that
Well,
exists there today.
If you've traveled across the country where the roundabouts have been put into difficult areas much like that, they work well. I mean, they allow for the flow of traffic.
Affords for some flexibility to be able to put those connections together.
And the biggest concern is going to be, too, is that it's built to handle the truck traffic that's going to be coming through there.
Yes.
my experience with the roundabouts, I get to Billings quite a bit, and there's a few there, is the mistake they make is in the middle of the roundabout, they put up a structure that doesn't allow you to see through.
Yeah.
In fact, they killed a couple of them about 3 weeks ago over there,
Hmm.
on one, because they had rock stacked up there.
Interesting.
And so they ended up
Interesting.
removing those down flat to where people could see through there.
Right.
So That's a
Just,
concern.
just not enough that they could drive through the
Over
middle of
it.
it. right?
Exactly. You have an obstruction.
We hear a lot, as engineers and designers, we hear a lot of that comment. We also hear about the size, there needs to be enough turning capacity to be able to get a larger truck through a roundabout.
That's a
So
large
concern as well.
intersection over there, so.
Yeah. And so we've looked at that in looking at the preliminary layout of that intersection.
Could you
Yes.
just maybe touch on reducing the lanes, how the flow of traffic affects the flow of traffic? I mean, obviously, does it carry the same amount, or is there a big difference in the amount of cars? that come through?
Obviously, 2 lanes isn't going to carry as much traffic as 4 lanes. But that's what I referenced earlier in the presentation, that the traffic volumes that we have on Villard and that we forecast to be on Villard are still within the range to be very acceptable within a typical 2-lane, 2-way type of, or single-lane, 2-way type of configuration. So from a capacity standpoint, we don't see any real significant problems or challenges, but there's some real benefits to to channelizing that traffic, as the mayor talked about, when you get 2 cars going side by side and the interaction with pedestrians, but also looking at as a driver that's trying to enter or leave the roadway, the number of decisions that they have to make and the number of conflict paths that they have is reduced, because now they know they're only dealing with one direction of travel, and then somebody's in the left turn lane, that's defined, and it's very understandable. And so the driver expectation becomes a really big issue in these 4-lane type areas, and going to a road diet really starts to simplify and make that a lot more understandable and a lot easier for the driver. The other thing that's probably pertinent to just mention to you is when we get the introduction and the intent to enhance and invite pedestrians, bicyclists, whatever, into that same area, and then parking as well, we start to develop what I'm going to term as a friction component, where the drivers that are on the road tend to be a little more focused and a little bit more attentive, and maybe travel just a little bit slower because of that side friction that exists. The capacity is not impacted in an adverse way, but it provides for a more enhanced safety type component for how people use the road and what they can expect when they're on the road.
One of the
that
biggest
make sense?
discussions people have in this town is people don't use their signals when they're supposed to. A lot of people don't use their signals. This will eliminate a lot of that. If they're in that center lane and it's big
You pretty much
airplane,
know
but
what they should be doing, right?
Pretty well much no, yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
I like the safety aspect of it all.
Yeah.
It's upgrade to every safety question we had.
Like I said before, it's not a one-size-fits-all. You wouldn't want to apply this if we had twice the traffic or another 75% of what the traffic is that's on Villard or projected to be on Villard, it would not work. You need that extra capacity component. But with the capacities that we're seeing, or the needs for that level of capacity, this will work.
And if we get that someday, we just change it back.
Yeah. Well,
Maybe.
Our analysis is going out to 2040, so, I mean, that's, another 20 years plus, so. So, I don't know if you have any other comments or questions. I want to make sure that if you do have comments specifically to the extent and the location of the road diet that we've shown on this drawing, is there anything in particular, do you have a concern if we extend it to State Avenue on the west?
I think it's a good plan to do it.
Mr. President, Mr. Comer,
Yes.
I think we will hear more about concerns tomorrow after it's printed in the newspaper.
Probably.
So is there a portal or a way that our citizens can communicate any frustrations or problems they have?
I can give you my contact information. I know the city's had a focus on trying to get Facebook interaction or social media.
Mr. Kubis, you set up
We set up that email. It's
Email,
sims.signal@dickinson.
And that's been good. I've accessed that information and be able to look at that and review that before tonight. So I think that is a good avenue.
Could you repeat that so it's clear? for people?
Yeah, well, and I'm repeating it off of memory, so I hope I'm right, but it's sims.signal@dickinsongov.com.
Okay. And if that's not correct, public, call Mr. Kupas' office.
Kyle.Comer.
So, like I said, we do want to hear, and we appreciate that input. We've tried to respond to that, what we heard of the public meeting and what we're discussing with you tonight.
President Decker, if I could, just a comment and maybe a couple questions quickly for Kyle. Just to clarify, the roundabout is going in not with this project, but with the East Business Loop, what we refer to here as the East Business Loop, east of 10th Avenue East. So that'll be another year off in 2021.
That is correct,
Okay.
yes.
Just
Good
so it's
clarification.
Clear for the public. And then on the striping of the bike lanes, will there be striping for bike lanes along the parking specifically?
We're looking into that. I mean, the district and the DOT is actually working on the striping related to their surfacing project, and so we're talking about what's necessary and what their preferences are there. So that hasn't been decided wholly.
I don't think we have a huge bike population right now.
It's dangerous.
Could be. It could increase with the availability of space, but right now, I think it'll just be welcome for anybody parking along Villard, that you can open a door and not worry about your door being ripped off.
Yes, that will, there's more room there.
Right.
The current, maybe to further extend the answer to your question, Craig, you see on the graphic there that's on the bottom, it's kind of hard to see, but right now we're just showing that center turn striping, or what the district is showing. So that's where it sits currently.
And then a point of clarification, maybe even for myself, the striping, as we are tying, like you mentioned, a district seal project in with this lighting project, so the cost of the striping will be included with the cost of the seal project?
That's a question I can't answer.
I don't think that was a question.
You got me there.
I know we have a meeting coming up to discuss how this will all come together.
Yeah, we're going to talk tomorrow on that, yeah.
So we hope the DOT can help us out with that. That's all I had. Thank you, Mr. President.
I got a thumbs up from the back.
Okay.
Hope it was the right guy.
Okay.
Get that on camera. Thumbs up.
Okay.
Any other
comments or questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
And I know there may be some people that want to comment about this, and there would be opportunity. This is not a public hearing, but if you do have any concerns and you're in the audience this evening, the public issues of city concern not on the agenda is item 10, and you can come up at that time and state your concerns. So we will proceed.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yep. We'll proceed. Mr. Guy, you have a thank you note?
Yes, I do. This is from the Cannonball Senior Center. They received a grant through the City Senior Citizen Grant Program to clean up around the outside of their building, do some new landscaping and a new entrance. You have in your packet there a picture of the completed project. It looks very nice. And just a little note, thanks for the grant dollars. As you can see by the enclosed photo, we have put the monies to good use from the Cannonball Senior Center, so it's always nice to hear from those folks.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gao. Well, moving in to engineering, Mr. Kupas, you have a NDDOT maintenance certification.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an annual maintenance certification that we signed with the DOT, and in essence, what it captures is that on routes that we've received federal aid to build, which there are many in Dickinson, but the routes generally that you'd say are arterials in Dickinson, the DOT asks that we keep these routes free of, non-transportation uses, private encumbrances if people are putting signs out there. And it's I tell you, a constant struggle to keep some of those things off of the right-of-way. Oftentimes there's plenty of green space out there and people want to utilize that. So we do send folks letters from time and again to try and keep them honest and keep their property on their property. A couple of the other things that it does, it asks that we, don't allow additional accesses that will go against the functionality of the original design that the DOT approved. So we do that through our site planning process. When someone comes in with a new say, a commercial site plan, these often aren't on residential streets, so I'd say commercial site plans usually would come in, we'd review that if they'd want an access onto one of these main roads that would decrease the functionality of the road. We'd say, no, we can't allow this for this maintenance certification. And then it also touches on parking, that we won't allow parking that would, again, in something like this on Villard, we would say, well, now we don't have a lot of room, we can't change this to diagonal parking without the DOT's consent on something like that. So, again, it's a agreement that we sign annually with the DOT, just stating that we're taking care of the right-of-ways where we've expended federal dollars on. With that, I'd open it up to any questions you have.
Any questions for Mr. Kubis?
This is the form that would have came into play on the road going out to the police, public safety building, north-south, when we denied the entrance onto the street.
It could apply to something like that. We use non-federal aid dollars to build that street, although it's now a federal aid street. So future work on that street will be involve federal aid dollars, presumably, yes.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Kubis? Now I'd look for a motion on the NDDOT maintenance certification.
Move to approve, Mr. President.
We have a motion that the Dickinson City Commission approve the NDDOT maintenance certification. Looking for a second.
Second, sorry.
Okay, we have a second. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick? Aye. Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion is approved. Mr. Kubis, we have a 2020 mill and overlay preliminary design contract.
Yes, thank you on that last approval. This contract with KLJ is a task order for the 2020 mill and overlay project. We have a master, call them a master task order, but in essence, a master service agreement with KLJ. And so this task order would follow under all the conditions of that master task order. The scope for this task order is essentially to get the ball rolling on our 2020 mill and overlay project, identify project areas, put together preliminary cost estimates for those areas, which will be really critical on this project, especially as we're entering into a project that will involve special assessments. We want to have good cost estimates from the get-go, as we're going to ask the public to foot a portion of this bill. So this task order we'll expect to be amended with a final design task order and a construction engineering task order. But again, this is kind of what I'd call a preliminary engineering or scoping task order to get the ball rolling here. With that, I'd open it up for any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Kubis? Being no questions or comments, I'd look for a motion on the 2020 mill and overlay preliminary design contract.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve
Second.
with a second. Any further discussion, questions, or comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Kubis. We'll move into Public Works. Mrs. Zuroff?
Not quite as tall as Mr. Comer. I'm going to stand for this presentation. Thank you, President Decker and Commission. I wanted to bring the winter operations plan before Commission tonight. In the 2019 initiatives, when we met early this year, one of our goals and initiatives was to review and adopt the winter operations plan with the Commission and present it to the public, and that's what we're doing tonight. Our goal is to work with the Commission, get direction, an agreed upon level of services, and then proceed and plan accordingly. I'm just going to go over some of the quick highlights. I also have Daryl Wayner, our street chief here. If there's any difficult questions, I'll ask him to come to the podium. So, first of all, I'd like to thank the commission over the years to give us the ability to purchase the equipment needed. As Dickinson grew, we've been able to purchase the equipment, the technology needed for taking care of the streets in Dickinson. Other things that we've improved with our staff, additional training, as I said, technology. We're improving with the trucks like we have on the screen. We're implementing AVL in all our vehicles this year, and I think we just installed 2 more vehicles today. This new plan does include all of Public Works. It includes buildings and grounds, trails, sidewalks, and other departments that are involved. It familiarizes everyone with the road classifications and level of service. It discusses emergency snow routes. We updated our emergency snow routes with signs and mapping. It talks a lot about our material description, our salt, our usage, application rates for the different type of salt and brine. It explains anti-icing, pre-wetting, and de-icing, and discusses the use of sand in the application. One of the goals in the last couple of years is try to improve our customer service. We've implemented our OpWork system. Anytime you call, text, anything else, we put in our asset management system. Service request will be created. We monitor those service requests and make sure that they're responded to. We've updated the fleet system, updating, like I said, the trucks, the application rates with the AVLs, and then how we're going to review that as snow operations get involved. We've also have a contract or an RFP out now for contractors. I think they're due this Friday. And so we're going to have contracts for multiple contractors to come in as needed to remove different areas and sections of town to help with snow removal. I just wanted to show you an example of a large snow event. I think it was a year or 2 ago. I think this was in about a week. These are the type of equipment and operations we have going in a large snow event. It's not just our larger plows. We have blowers going, motor graders, brine trucks, salt trucks, haul dump trucks. And this doesn't include our trails, sidewalks, and probably 4 or 5 other pieces of equipment personnel in a large snow event. We are out there trying to keep the roads clear and passable for the public. As you can see, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate our operators. They do put in long hours. Their goal is to clean the street as soon as they can, and our goal is to do that too, but make sure they come home safe. This is just as an attachment to the snow operations plan is the snow priority routes. I know I've talked about level 1, level 2, and level 3s for a long time. As you can see, the level 1s are the major arterials, and then we go to minor arterials, and then around also the major arterials around emergency services. So level 1 and level 2s are priority 1 when we get a storm, and then we move from there. I should take any questions and input on this plan, and thank you very much.
Mr. President.
Mr. Steiner.
Mr. Zuroff, you dodged a bullet last week.
Well, I thought I was plenty ahead getting this on commission. This time I thought I was perfectly planned.
Perfect.
But I'm glad we could make it to commission today. And
so my next question is, on State Avenue between 12th and 15th, where we had the snow fence on the west side, is that going to be put up again this year?
12th and 15th?
By the interstate there.
Underneath the interstate overpass.
Right.
It's the north that.
We did, I believe we did windrows, and we had multiple windrows last year. We're gonna continue to do that as soon as we get,
Okay.
are able to do that.
And then if you could consider the property, that vacant property by the mall there that goes on that little loop there, by the motel, the Grand
Okay.
Armada. That, even just the other day, that was feeling, that's always seems to be a spot where it builds up into the road and the people are going farther and farther to the south to get around that corner.
Okay.
Do you know where I'm talking about?
Are we by Hillside, or where are we?
No.
Okay.
Where the parking lot is in the mall, that empty, where it's right by that stop sign where you
Okay.
turn.
You know where
So
Papa
that's
Murphy's
Mike's
is?
Hotel right
Yep,
there?
back there.
Papa
Yep,
Murphy's,
okay.
right?
I'm sorry, there, yep.
That's a bad, that's always
The
blown.
most
Maybe
current one.
we can talk to them all and get a fence up along there somehow.
We had talked in previous meetings about erecting some snow fences in some problematic areas.
Right.
And I don't see that anywhere within the manual here.
It's not part of our plan, we sure can. What we found is the best is when the snow comes in, is to start building windrows. You can do multiple rows and catch the snow much quicker and sooner. Snow fence, it depends which way the wind's blowing. You could snow fence the whole thing, and then once that's full,
Maybe we
it's
can talk to
done.
the mall and make sure that when time comes, we can do that. That is a problem area.
But if commission wants snow fence, we can sure put up snow fence.
That's fine, whatever you
Okay.
recommend.
I just know we have some very problematic areas that blow in continuously.
Yep.
And especially in the Westridge area, we're gonna, until that fills in and there's, different vegetation, it's gonna be a problematic
Right.
area for those residents. And 15th out there, basically blows across an open field and blows shut. 21st going out to the middle school continues to be an issue. I mean, there's probably, and then we have some very problematic areas on the north side of town in those Cooks Edition, Wall Street, and, if anything that could alleviate some of the time that you guys, in the preseason activities, which I'm looking in here, and the preseason activities are, basically inspection equipment and,
Correct.
if that could, the insertion of, snow fences seem to work in different areas. You've lived in Montana.
We've
You've been
tried
to
some.
Wyoming.
And maybe I'll let our chief of street explain how we're doing the windrows. And we can sure look at additional snow fence, but once it snows, when you can do multiple windrows in some of these properties, it really seems to hold the snow. But we will sure look at snow fences, determine on the size, the distance, all of that has to be determined.
Good afternoon. I knew you'd find a way to get me up here. One problem with snow fences is, where do you put them? The wind doesn't always come from the same direction. The protection area is roughly 15 to 60 feet downwind from the fence, so you have to have them about 75 feet back. The area Mr. Steiner is talking about, that's on private property. We have issues doing that. We've found over the years that once the snow comes in, we go out there with a maintainer and we create several smaller windrows, and every time it snows, we go out and replow them, build them up, and that way the snow starts catching on those and we get less snow making it to the streets. Plus, where we have the problem with more snow piling up, those windrows are higher and they end up catching more. So they're kind of self-adjusting, I guess you could say. And then also they remove themselves in the spring.
I think that area out by tractor and equipment, that area, didn't last year we do multiple windrows on the northwest part of that, and it seemed to work real well.
One of the citizens out there had problems with drifting in. The year before, we were fighting it constantly. Last year, we started at the beginning of the year. It was either 3 or 4 windrows we had in the lot to the west of him, and he didn't have anywhere near the problem.
We'll do more exploring the fences and probably put that in the plan and maybe areas we can get leases or permission.
I mean,
No,
if it works, fine, if
We're-
snow.
We're willing to look at any tool to help us
Yeah, yeah.
alleviate some of these areas, so thank you.
And just for the public's knowledge, we've made some adjustments when we're going to start a total amount of accumulation.
Yes, and I think I do have that in the plan.
Right, just for their knowledge.
Yeah, so if you go back, where do we have level? Is it? Normally, the map here. So a lot of the areas, you know, if it just snowed and didn't blow or a storm didn't continue to come down, we would be able to get our level 1 and level 2s done, I would say within 24 hours, and then we could hit some of the residential. But that does not happen in a bigger storm. A lot of our most recent storms, we're out on some of these areas, the high priority, plowing them once, 2, 3, 4 times a day. And so we're on level 1 and level 2s and can never get to the residential sometimes for days. And that's been, I think, our biggest issue the last couple of years is when can we get down to residential, because our priorities are level 1s and 2s. So with discussion with the commission, we're looking at if we get up to accumulation of 4 inches or 4 inches snowfall, that we're going to start, if we are continually working on level 1 and 2s, that we will then assign the contractors different areas of town to start removing snow in residential. And I think that will help a lot on the windrows and the driveways, if we can get after them a lot quicker and sooner. So that's why we're going to contract with multiple contractors and I think assign them areas. And so once we hit that point, we'll end there again. If we can get to those, we're going to try to get to them. But if we can't, then we'll have the contractors do that. And I think that's one new, and we'll see how that approach works this year.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Zuroff or Mr. Wayner?
Mr. President? So, Mr. Zuroff, are you going to start using the app, or how are you going to communicate to the public when you're out there, just so they kind of know? I know we talked on a little bit earlier as far as when they need to move their vehicles, so that way you guys can get in clean. Are you going to utilize the app that you're using? Because I saw that was in the proposal.
Yeah, there's a couple things, and I guess one of the things I want to know, any public has a question, please call 456-7979. We also have the Dickinson Work apps that we use for garbage disposal, and we're going to try to use that more this year. So if there's a notification in that regard, we're going to try to notify the public if you're signed up on that Dickinson Works app, and please call that number to get signed up. Also, we're going to continue to use Facebook and the city website for notices. As far as the emergency snow route, and I didn't talk about that much, is that we'll try to get out on the app and Facebook and website. So if emergency snow route emergency is declared, then those areas that are signed, we need the traffic off of there, and we'll try to let the public know us in many ways, any way we can.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We have nothing from planning this evening or buildings and code enforcement. We will move into public issues of city concerns not on the agenda. If anyone has any public or any concerns not on our agenda this evening, please come forward, state your name for the commission to hear your issues. Anyone from the public have any concerns not on the agenda? Anyone from the public who has any city concern not on the agenda, please come forward. Seeing no one has any concerns not on our agenda, we'll close that part of our meeting, and we'll move on to item 11. Commissioners, any items you wish to discuss that were not on the agenda this evening? Anything? If not, we have an executive session planned to discuss city administrator's contract. I'd look for a motion to move to executive session under North Dakota Century Code 44-04-19.1 and 44-04-19.2.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion to move to executive. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We'll be moving to executive. We are back in regular session, and I've been provided guidance from the city commission to continue with our contract negotiations with City Administrator Goff. Anything else, commissioners, that you wish to discuss? We have a motion to adjourn and a second. We are adjourned.